Hey there, Joe here, Profit First Reseller. I got some PlayStation 2 consoles to list, so I went downstairs to grab these video cables that I bundle with them, and I realized I have a whole bunch of video cables and only 6 PlayStation consoles to list. And I can actually sell these in lots of 10 on my eBay store for 20 to 30 bucks plus shipping. And as you can see, I've got maybe 100 or more in here in this box. So I'm gonna go ahead and just wrap these up and chat with you, I guess, while I do it. So that's what I'm doing this morning. Sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm doing. It kind of allows my squirrel brain to stay satisfied. But my intention was to list these consoles before I went and packed my orders, but these consoles have been sitting in my room for a while and went downstairs, and then this kind of sidetracked me a little bit with one more task to get done before I get the consoles done, before I get my packages done. You ADD people, you know what I mean. But I'm going to try to stay on track and get this done, and then get those done, and then get my packages done. And the kind of hack that I use in my life, because I hate clutter, is I just make sure it's right here in the middle of my space, so I have to keep looking at it until I take care of it. And that could be dangerous if you allow it to take over your life, but I'm just so strongly motivated by wanting to get rid of clutter that it tends to work for me. So typically I will just take off these rubber bands. Often rubber bands will leave a little crease mark on cables because they just continue to cinch down kind of forever. Whereas twist ties just stay right where you put them. So I'm going to replace all these with twist ties, and I will be inspecting them for condition and then just moving them over to this bucket of processed cables. And I'll set aside a few to bundle with these consoles and then save a few more for future consoles. But I'm going to assume I'm going to continue to get way more cables than I do of working consoles. So I'm not going to save very many of these. And so the majority of these cables in this box are going to end up listed on my store in lots of 10. So I guess we'll see how many lots of 10 we get out of this box here. That'll be fun. So these are all the genuine PlayStation with the little Sony PlayStation symbol kind of engraved there in the plastic. And these were used for the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3. Pretty incredible, pretty cool of Sony to keep this one connector style relevant for all 3 generations. Although, of course, most people in the PS3 probably using HDMI, but this was an option to still use the older style, the red, white, yellow composite cable. So anyway, set aside just a few comments today. I thought we'd go over here. Oh yeah, I didn't actually, sometimes I don't always make a note of who the commenter is when I'm going through these, but here we got Maya Esger, or Mayasger, has been leaving in a lot of amazing comments, and so thank you for that. This current one says, Joe, I'm curious if we are all paying the same fees to eBay, or do you get a better rate? Maybe you can do a post about fees if you haven't already. Wow, that'd be so cool. So part of why I wanted to bring this up is my wife and I are going to be doing an episode soon on finances for resellers. So I wanted to go ahead and ask you early on in the video here if you have any questions that you'd like us to address. And we're not here to give advice or financial advice, but as far as questions about our financial structure, my wife is all over it, and she's such what Ramit said he would call an optimizer. And I think in the best way, where she really optimizes our finances, making sure that we're getting the best interest rates and things like that. So, hello. Hello. You want to come in? Are you going to go to work?
Yeah, I'm going to.
You want to say hi to YouTube?
Hi.
Lucy just did an amazing hip hop dance recital yesterday, and now she's actually going to work for our store to earn some money for a Lego set. She's going to go work on some Wii remotes and putting the covers, the battery backs and the straps and the silicone covers on the Wii remotes. So she's going to try to earn some money. She's about $20 short for a Lego set, so she's working on that. And she performed all day. She had 2 performances and was backstage all day yesterday for her hip hop dance recital. So she had a big day. We're having a recovery day today. So I'll get to this comment eventually, I think. But please do, if you have any comments in relation to maybe a future episode about finances, how we pay ourselves, LLC, S Corp, retirement funds, all that stuff. I am so bad at even remembering what we've decided to do, but my wife is so on top of it and always wanting to make sure that we're making the right choices for all that stuff. So we of course we work with an accountant. We worked with the same CPA for like 15 years. She's awesome. But my wife does a lot of it too, and including a lot of the QuickBooks stuff. So a lot of the behind the scenes numbers. So she really has a better handle on the numbers for our business than I do. So yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. I'm just gonna kind of play the explain like I'm 5 person, and she's gonna, be there to answer some questions. So if y'all have any questions about, being an eBay reseller, insurance, that is something else to navigate too. We're not going to get insurance provided by our employer, so we got to figure that out ourselves. And again, insurance is available at a cost, but yeah, that one's been a struggle too. Again, not like we have a perfect, perfect insurance or everything. I think we have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but it's pretty minimal. It's more like I don't even know. I don't even know the right terminology. Maybe she can explain it better than me. I'll let her do it before I mess something up. So if y'all have any questions about any of that stuff, leave them down below in the comments, and then I'll be able to pull those for a future video with the two of us. It'll be fun. And my wife loves talking that stuff, and I love talking with her because that's right in her wheelhouse when it comes to finances and figuring out how to optimize and save money. So yeah, anyway. So speaking of fees, she was looking up fees because it's kind of relevant here. Of course, she's the one that had those numbers. So last year, she said we paid around $65,000 in fees to eBay last year. So I was so curious. So what Mayasgur's question is here, Joe, I'm curious if we are all paying the same fees to eBay, or do you get a better rate? Maybe you can do a post about fees if you haven't already. So I had never actually thought about it until that question. And I was like, wait a second. When you get to like high level business, everything's negotiable. So I actually pulled up the AI app that I've been using recently, Grok. And I said, hey, Grok, is it possible for eBay sellers to negotiate seller fees with eBay? And what Grok told me, based on a few Twitter posts and a few Reddit threads, was that people have tried negotiating fees with eBay, including specifically one person, I think on Reddit, said that they were at around 40,000 pounds in fees paid to eBay per year. So around $50,000 is what Grok said. And what they said that eBay told them was that they would need to be paying at least 10 times that in order to be considered, to even be looked at by eBay for a cut in fees. So eBay is apparently really only interested in giving discounted fees to the very, very big players. And I think that's because right now eBay does not have any real big competition. They don't really need to. But it did get me thinking, because my wife reminded me today as we were talking about this, when we were running our restaurant, we used Square for the register software. Square was our credit card processing software. And in the beginning, they charged us something like 3.5% plus, 5 cents or 10 cents per swipe or something like that. I forget what it was. Something like that. And I ended up maybe reading on Reddit, or I don't know where we heard, but we heard somewhere that you could negotiate fees at a certain point. And at that point, we were probably doing over, I had probably around $500,000 in sales, a lot of transactions. And so there was a lot of room to negotiate. And so we reached out to them and we got a massive discount on our rates just for asking. So when you think about some actions you could do for your business that have very little downside and very high upside, that's like literally reducing your fees is free money, but it's a small amount at the end of the day that we're talking about negotiating. Definitely worth considering. But it seemed like the recurring theme was that you needed to be paying to eBay between $500,000 and $1 million a year to be considered for special accommodations for fees. Maybe you need to be like an Adidas or a Puma or something like that, or a major bookseller, I'm sure, stuff like that. Another thing brought up by Grok, that did some AI research, said that somebody on Reddit said that they were able to negotiate a special rate on fees for items over $1,000 on eBay, but they had to sign an NDA and they were not able to disclose any further details of the deal. But it also kind of makes sense if you're exclusively selling really high value items, but maybe in a category with still a very high percentage, maybe you could negotiate with eBay on that. So yeah, really, it got me thinking, because really at high levels of business, I think it's all negotiable. So you might as well ask. So I'm still considering asking. You know, we spent $65,000 in fees last year. It really doesn't hurt to ask, right? I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to say no, probably. That's fine. So if I'm feeling spicy one of these weekends, I might give eBay a call. We'll see. But yeah, very thought-provoking. But apparently I'm not even close. I need to be, 7 to 10x my current output before I am going to be considered for special rates, according to Grok, according to my 10 minutes of research today. But it did get me thinking. That was really interesting. And some people are definitely getting some special fees. Again, there was also a person saying that they had to sign an NDA, but they did have some special allowance for fees of certain kinds. I love that. I think it's pretty cool to think about. There's so many areas to be creative in business, including kind of with your own employer, just figuring out what your leverage is, So I am top rated plus. So if you're top rated plus, which means you have to offer free returns, 30-day returns and 1-day handling time, you get 10% off of your fees. It's not 10%, 10% off just the fee amount. So that does add up. I mean, that's a huge bonus right there. So if you are a seller who's selling a lot on eBay, 10% off is significant. So I think doing what you need to be top rated seller works. Now, I was actually top rated plus for years, only dropping off my packages 3 times a week, which some people think isn't possible, but I found a lot of success. I would always ship my orders daily, but I would only drop them off Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I had 1-day handling time, and it worked out great. All my packages got there within the metrics, and it always worked out great for me. I really only ever had issues once I started going to pickups, which I did every day. But the pickups also just came with a whole bunch of hassles and missed pickups or missed scans. So there's a lot more hassle there. But anyway, yeah, really got me thinking. Yeah, I mean, $65,000 a year in fees is a lot. So if I can negotiate an extra 10% off of that, that's another $6,500 off. So definitely worth thinking about. This is another comment that somehow I had missed until just today, so I'm glad I was able to scroll back to my comments and find it here. Reseller Moxie said, speaking on the commenter, 1953, who was perplexed that you had an item, Black Ops 2 priced $7 higher than your nearest competition. As someone who's had several sales jobs, the first rule of sales is, or should be, you don't get what you don't ask for. No one's going to volunteer to pay more. And those who are inclined to seriously negotiate must do so based on your asking price. Someone's going to push that FMV needle. Based on how supply and demand fluctuates, someone is going to get that new high price. It might as well be you. Got an eBay store by the same name, but when I linked it in my previous comment, I guess the Goog didn't like that, so the comment disappeared. Oops. Yeah, maybe that's why I couldn't see the comment before or this one either, but anyway, great comment, great insight. Yeah, I love that. And it seems a little bit selfish, but let's just remember that buyers are people, but sellers are people too, with a job, and we are often bringing these items to the market. So I don't think that the lowest possible price is necessarily the best thing for everyone. I think we need to find a fair price for these things. And so many sellers are focused on a race to the bottom, on being just the lowest priced item on eBay, and even undercutting everyone else by a few cents. And that's certainly your prerogative to utilize that strategy, I guess, to be politically correct. But eventually you might be pushing the price down. And so it's actually in the best interest of sellers to bring the price back up to what the market can tolerate and is a fair price. And again, I think sellers are people too. I think making sure that there's a fair amount of profit built into the price for these items is great. I don't think every video game needs to crash to the very lowest possible price. So that is why I often sort by highest when I'm doing sold comps in my price research, just to see if anyone's ever gotten a certain amount for this item, at least in the last 90 days. I'm like, well, maybe I can as well. If there are buyers looking for a premium eBay product, like they're on eBay, they don't want to necessarily pay full price, They want to buy a high quality item or a collectible or a high quality used item. So whatever it is, especially if in the video game category, especially if I have a game that is in very good condition, it is complete. I think this buyer was probably talking about a complete copy of Black Ops 2 with all the manual, the manual and all the inserts and all that, and a case in very good condition. All those things can affect the price, even up to $7. So I think that somebody is probably willing to pay that much for that game. And if they aren't, I'll just drop the price. Like I'm not, you really have nothing to lose except a few weeks worth of money back in my pocket. It's just more delay on the flip, but the upside is you are able to maybe discover a price at which you're able to sell your items, especially something like my Wii remotes. We sell these Wii remotes and nunchucks pretty much every day. And so if we can figure out a price that works for our buyers, but also allows us to sell it at a rate that we like, it's a win-win. And we have very satisfied customers for those items for sure. Our Wii remotes and nunchucks are crushing it. Lucy's helping act there. I'm stoked. We got some help here on the weekend. She's trying to earn some money for a Lego set. And she's going to earn us some money too. So they don't really necessarily get paid for their chores, we've decided in our house, because I want to make sure that they have the choice to earn it. My wife's been really thoughtful about this as well, right? Like we thought of, we do give them a small allowance of money every month, I think. But it's not like it's tied to their chores. Chores are just something that everyone in the house has to do every day. Like and it's kind of just like, we all do as much as we can. It's not like we're all expected to do the same. Obviously, we have different expectations of each person, but they all are expected to help. But it's not like they have a choice to not do chores in exchange for not getting the money, if that makes sense. So it didn't really make sense to tie it to that because they kind of have to do chores in order to do any of the other fun stuff in their life. So they do still get paid and they do a lot of chores in the house too. But I guess what I was trying to get to is for these additional jobs. So the chores are just their basic stuff, cleaning up their toys and vacuuming or unloading the dishwasher, stuff like that. But if they want to help in the business, then I am really happy and careful to make sure that they get paid, because this is a way that I'm getting paid as well. And they're going above and beyond in a way to earn money for the family. And I don't expect them to do that. Their job at their age is not to earn money as an expectation. That's my job, right? But if they want to help, then I'm going to give them a cut. And so she's happy to do it. So right now I have tested working and cleaned Wii remotes, but they're just bare and they've been cleaned, but they don't have the strap, they don't have the battery back, and they're not in the silicone case. And so she's doing all three of those steps. So she's going to take the Wii remote, attach the strap through the loop, put on the battery cover, and then put it into the silicone cover. And I'm paying her 20 cents per Wii remote. It's fun. And the kids are actually like on the payroll. Like we actually do report their stuff, and it's fun. I really enjoy having them on board. I forget where I read this, but I read somewhere that, kids don't typically have resentment for doing chores around the house as an expectation. But some of the kids that do have resentment on the work that they did looking back were farm kids, because they saw that they were working and earning money for the family as well, but they weren't getting any of that money necessarily. And farm life is hard. I think there's a lot of resentment in general around farm life because it's so hard. It's just, nobody says that's easy. So anyway, that's a little bit of our parenting strategy here. And it looks like my phone went to sleep, so let me pause this. All right, we should be back here. Yeah, thank you so much for leaving this comment, Reseller Moxie. And I agree. I think somebody's got to make sure that the price isn't just falling to the basement as well for this stuff. And so, yeah, might as well be me. I'm at least going to try. I'm at least going to try to sell it for $7 higher. And I'll reevaluate. I try to make sure my video games move quick, especially those. So if that video game doesn't move in a month or two, I'll just readjust the price. Really very little downside. But the upside is I've discovered a new price at which I can sell an item that I get multiple times per year. So, all right, another great comment here from Married with Football. It says, I've bought 2 really bad bulk lots in my reselling life. I bought 100 car stereos pretty early in my journey. The guy told me his dad owned a junkyard and he would take out their stereos before they jumped out the car and all should work. I started listing them and they were selling like instantly. And then a few days later, I started to get the return notices. Every single one was faulty. Big lesson learned. Then I bought over 1,000 pieces of clothing from someone who was closing their eBay store. I had to drive 5 hours both ways to get it, but they were like pennies for each item. The first mistake was my SUV wasn't big enough, so I ended up leaving some behind. Second was when I got them back and started to sort them, I was only able to sell like 2% of it. At the end, I barely made my money back, but spent so much time in it. These failures actually scared me from buying big buys, but as I ramp back up, I know it is something I will need to get comfortable with and figure out how to cover my butt before I hand over cash. So really great. I mean, yes, wow. I mean, I'm sorry, that seems so hard. And can you imagine all that work and driving 5 hours each way and all that, and then maybe you break even after all that? It's just gotta be crushing. Like I feel it. And that is a risk every time. I think about that. So I'll go over a little bit kind of what I talked about in my reply there and kind of my thinking when I buy bulk buys, which is pretty much my entire business these days. And often in fact, usually I don't get full details of what I'm buying. It is very rare. I can count on one hand the number of times I've bought something that's fully manifested. What that means is there will be some kind of a spreadsheet or a sheet of paper that has a list of every item and how many of each one and all the different details of every single one. And I've been shocked sometimes. I'm like, who cataloged every single item on this entire pallet? It's happened a couple times, but it is so rare. And I think most people, especially if they go up to any kind of a scale, decide that that's not worth the time or the manpower or whatever to count everything. So they just try to take pictures. And for me, often with pallets, all I get is a few pictures of the top. Again, occasionally people are really cool and they'll take progressive pictures, maybe as they fill up this giant pallet Gaylord box of how it stacks up. But typically, and that's all I get. If I get any pictures at all, sometimes, it's just a description or whatever. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is when I'm considering buying a bulk lot, I'm thinking about what's the worst that could happen. Like I'm trying to make sure that sorry about that, the microphone. I'm trying to make sure my downside is minimal, okay? So essentially, if I was gonna consider buying a whole pallet of whatever, or 100 stereos, I'd be asking myself, what's the worst that could happen? Like if every single one of these is broken, would there be some way to quickly make my money back? Or how would I be able to get out of it quick? Or essentially thinking about not just the upside, which is easy to get lost in, like what's the potential profit? Okay, that's another way of talking about the upside, is what's the best possible thing that could happen from this pallet? You can think about that for a second, but I think to be a sustainable business, I think you should be thinking about maybe, at least a little bit, what's the worst thing that could happen with this purchase, with my money and time? If it all goes horribly bad, am I going to be okay? What am I going to do? To also kind of have already figured out a plan for this inventory if it's worse than you think. So I try to just buy my bulk buys based on what I can see. And even if it's only the top layer of a big box or a big pile of stuff, I try not to price. I just try to assume that if I can't see it, it's just pure garbage. And that for me would be the worst case scenario, is all the stuff behind the piles of things, maybe, as I'm trying to figure out and zoom in on the photos, what might actually be for sale based on these few blurry photos of somebody who's just trying to get rid of some stuff, right? I think in doing that, I'm just trying to shore up my downsides. I'm going to try to figure out as many items as I can that I could pretty much make money on, or at least I could know the value if they were broken. So maybe I'll see a few consoles or a few controllers or a few cables that I recognize. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a few $100s in profit, even if those things are broken and even if everything else is trash. So to be thinking about that, then a lot of the time, maybe even most of the time, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. But if you're continually buying with that worst case scenario in mind, and maybe hopefully, I mean, the dream would be worst case scenario, you're still profitable, or maybe you still break even, right? To be thinking about that, like this is your money and time as a business, and you can't be spending time on things that don't pay you out, because then your hourly rate can drop to zero or even negative, right? As a business owner, like you can be working and you can be spending money and not making any profit. Like that's scary to think about. So bulk buys are scary. It's a lot of money at once. I do not recommend it. to beginners. I think you need to figure out your niche. I think you need to have figured out a plan for handling everything that you buy before you buy it. Just trying to buy something and figure it out is already a bad idea for a single item in a thrift store. You know, even if you're buying a single item, you should already have a plan. Like, I'm going to sell this on eBay. It's going to go in this kind of box. It's going to be around this price. There's no need to buy items that we don't have a plan for. We can do all that work ahead of time. We have access to eBay and sold comps and all that stuff. So, oh, my phone died again. That's how you know it's a good one. I'm yapping over here, and I should just set my phone's auto timeout to sooner. But yeah, let's see if I can. So yeah, essentially, yeah, back to Married with Football's comment here. Hopefully it pops back on the screen. Sorry about that. It's so clumsy. I'm having to like restart the video here. I appreciate it. This is a really thoughtful comment, and being able to reflect back on the parts of your business that didn't go well, but then to still see the opportunity, I think is really smart. I think that there is opportunity there, and I think that the fact that it scares people away means there's probably a lot of opportunity there as well. So yeah, I think a lot about that's basically what Warren Buffett talks about, I guess, just like at the most basic level of his investing strategy. It's just making sure that the downside is minimal and then the upside is substantial, right? The upside is worth the time, and that the downside is not going to sink you. And you've got a plan in case it all crashes to zero or that particular investment just goes really badly. Still, you're going to be covered. That's important. It's a really smart thing, a mature thing to think about, I think. So thank you, Married with Football. Oh, also they said, I hope you're monetized soon. Yeah, I just did the video and I was just monetized for the first month. So thank you so much. Hello.
Bye.
Hello, goodbye.
Hello, goodbye.
Prickly Pear Camera says, great video. I just found your channel. I've been a full-time eBay seller for 8 years and been selling on eBay since 2002, back in the days of personal checks and money orders. Keep it up. By the way, from a few videos ago, you noted that a few people would have interest in doing this full time. And I agree. It takes a self-motivated person to do it. And like you, I work 6 or 7 days a week, but I can take the kids to school, do appointments, and take vacation whenever I want. So I find the benefits well worth it. Wow, so selling since 2002. I mean, I wanted to highlight that. And also, Prickly Pear Camera has, I think, 60,000 subscribers or something insane. So check out Prickly Pear Camera on YouTube. They do camera gear reviews. And so I'm excited to dive in there. Really incredible stuff. So congratulations on that. And yeah, and also an eBay seller since 2002 and a full-time eBay seller for 8 years. So wow, it seems like we got a lot in common. That's so cool, man. Thank you so much for reaching out. Back in 2002, so cool. It really is true. And I want to stress that again, that I don't think that full-time eBay reselling is suitable for most people. You have to be prepared to be your own boss, and that is really hard and often not as rewarding, especially in the early stages, as you're putting in so many hours and not getting a lot of external validation or monetary reward. It's really pretty soul-crushing in the early stages, even as you're building up an eBay store. So I totally agree. I think it's a great side hustle. So I want to be really clear there. I think eBay is a great way to make money in your spare time, but it's very stressful to have as a full-time job. You have to be used to the ups and downs of small business ownership. It's something that my wife and I have gotten used to, and part of that is having an emergency savings fund to be able to ride out the slow times, because I mean, no small business is going to be perfectly consistent. So I think it's about being able to ride that out. But again, it is stressful. It's for a lot of people, and understandably so. So I don't think that full-time eBay is for very many people, but as a way to add extra income to your established source of income, I think it could be really great. But it's just, and having boundaries, it's hard. Like, it's easy to talk about being able to spend time with my kids, but for years, I've really struggled to take the time to spend with my kids because I felt this constant crushing need to turn my time into money. And lately, I've somehow been able to achieve some amount of peace and stability internally where I am able to kind of slow down and play action figures with them for an hour and not feel like my eBay store is just going to be completely imploding if I'm not constantly working on it. But that's been a struggle. Like, it's hard. And I think that I'm fairly good at self-regulating and at pushing myself but not pushing myself too hard. And I really struggle with that. So I just recognize that if that's something that I think I might be fairly good at, I'm still really struggling with working enough but not too much and spending. I mean, it's just, it is like there's no one to tell you to clock out. It's only you. And it's easy to second guess yourself. And second guessing yourself is kind of a good quality, but not for confidence. So you end up, as for me at least, as a business owner, just walking around constantly scratching my head like, am I doing this right? Like, am I working too much? Am I not working enough? Like, am I, I'm in my 30s. I'm only getting older, and I'm like, maybe I'll have less energy later, so I should be working more now. But also, my kids will never be this young, so I should be spending more time with them. And these are just like the normal internal struggles. And it's nice to have that freedom, but it's also a burden in some ways because you have to make those decisions. And often it's not perfect. Sometimes I don't really want to work, but I feel like I need to, and I'd rather be doing this, or, it's hard. It's hard to know if you've done the right thing, except in retrospect, looking back, I think both, maybe in parenting and business ownership, it's just a lot of, in the moment, you're like, I have no idea if this is going well. But looking back after the last few years, you can be like, all right, well, it turned out okay. The business turned out okay, or the kids are turning out okay. It's hard to know. Day to day, it's hard to know. At least for me. Now, looking at the numbers helps, but I tried not to get too lost in those because so much of that's out of my control. The only number that I really want that I can't even find, like I would like literally pay for a plugin if there's any developers out there. All I want to know, I want just a big notification in my email or something, just like, or import it onto my desktop. I want to know how many items I listed today. That's all I care about. But I end up having to do this math of like looking at the active listings on my store and then seeing how much that increased by the end of the day. But then I have to also, subtract how many sold items there were over the course of those few hours, because I'm also selling items at the same time. It's just complicated. I just want to know, and I'm sure some bot that's watching my store could easily tally this, but I just want to know how many items I listed today. Like I'd find that really motivating. Like I want to get that number to 100. And if I didn't have to calculate it myself and I could just focus on listing stuff, I think that'd be really cool. But that's the one number that I actually want from eBay I can't even get, which is like, how many items did I list today? I want to know. Anyway, thank you, Prickly Pear Camera. And yeah, definitely check out Prickly Pear Camera on YouTube. Doing some great stuff over there. Dutch Weeks 1 says, I would 100% be interested in that retirement video, but I would also appreciate it being explained as though I'm 4 years old. Well, luckily for you, that's the exact dynamic on these intense financial matters between my wife and I. I'm like, okay, I think I understand the general principles, but can you explain that to me like I'm 5? That's like the Reddit thing. Maybe we'll go down a year. Maybe we'll go 4 years old for the video. Like, can you explain it to me like I'm 4? We have a 3-year-old right now, so that might be a little bit easier to conceptualize anyway. So I think it'll be fun. And again, I think that's the last comment I wanted to highlight. There's so many more great comments I'll be bringing up in future videos. And thank y'all for contributing. But before I sign off here, please, if you have any financial questions you want to ask us, put them in the comments for my wife and I. And though we are not financial experts, we are happy to explain our own financial setup. And I think that we've just achieved a lot of financial peace where I think that a lot of our peers really haven't. And a lot of it just comes down to the boring fact that we've kept our expenses very low and our lifestyle very simple. But there's also a lot of small things behind the scenes, credit card hacking and high interest savings accounts and tax shielded investments and all that stuff. So we'll get into it, but hopefully explaining it easily, like we're 4 or 5. So drop your comments down below. Any questions, retirement, insurance, all that stuff. I'm Joe, Profit First Reseller. Yeah, we're making some money over here. Until next time, I'll see you in the comments.